Hello, I'm Ray Bradshaw, and this is a Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 5th of November. And today, we're focusing on Celtic.
It's touched home and there's no flag! And Callum Osmond is his first Celtic goal! Celtic 3, 10-man Rangers 1!
After their win over arch-rivals Rangers in the League Cup semi-final, has Martin O'Neill got his feet under the desk, or will we see someone different in the dugout for the Cup final?
Secretly, you would love to, but these games, it's all about results. It is, honestly. And that will determine whether the board might think about taking their time. If we'd got beaten, I might not even have seen Thursday.
Does this signal an upturn in the relationship between fans and the board?
And the keeper able to bring that under control. Well, boos ring out round Celtic Park.
Plus, we'll take a look forward to Celtic's crucial clash with Midtjylland tomorrow night in the Europa League.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Yes, it's bonfire night. Hopefully we'll have some fireworks and we can make an argument between our two guests. So today we're going to be chatting about Celtic. First up, we've got Paul John Dykes, award-winning host of a Celtic State of Mind podcast. Paul, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking me on. Always a pleasure. Interesting times at Celtic.
Also joining Paul John this morning, we have Cillian Sheridan, former Celtic forward, currently playing for Brechin. Cillian, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you, Ray.
Right, well, let's kick off because I was saying about Celtic recently. I've spoke to you, Cillian, about it. Paul John, I've seen you talk about it. Martin O'Neill's come in. It's been a whirlwind kind of 10 days since he took over from Brendan Rodgers. Two great results, Paul John. First of all, how has he turned these players around so quickly?
It's really incredible. I mean, we do get a lot of talk about modern football. This is something I'd be interested to hear from Cillian, because we can get bogged down, I think, from coaches over-coaching players, too much emphasis on the analysis, understand the importance of it. And I think Martin's come in, and a lot of the changes that we've seen have been pretty much basic changes, old school changes. The way that we're approaching the game has been really refreshing. I know it's only 2 games, but we were stale, Ray. We were really stale. We were predictable. It was the side-by-side passing. It was all the ball within the 2 centre-half positions and the goalkeeper. And he's torn it up, and he's done some simple things like, let's look at Callum McGregor a wee bit further forward. Let's push Arnie Engels into more of a number 6. And it's working, and it's intense again and entertaining to watch, which, I think that we had got stuck in a rut, and Martin O'Neill has somehow managed to navigate us out of that rut for the time being.
Because, Cillian, does the new manager bounce exist? Like, you've played for numerous clubs over the years. Like, is it a thing?
I think the last time I was on, we were talking about it, and I said that it's actually not really that much of a thing anymore, but Martin O'Neill has. It's hard to argue that it hasn't happened here. It's. I was kind of skeptical about it all, but it's turned out to be a great appointment, and definitely in the short term anyway. You can clearly see a change in the players, the team, the way they play. There's even see as soon as the ball goes out of play, how quickly players are rushing to get the ball and get it back in play and just play quickly. And there just looks to be like more of an urgency on just playing quickly. It's strange. And it kind of brings me back to maybe, because my last experience with Martin O'Neill was watching the Ireland team, and it wasn't good football. And he used to come out with a lot with, it's the players. I just don't have the players, and maybe he was right. Maybe with Ireland, I think he actually didn't have the players, and it's showing now that with good players, he's actually bringing entertaining, fast-flowing, I wouldn't say attractive yet, but just entertaining football.
Yeah, it's been so quick to turn it around. Paul John, let me ask you this, because what's been fascinating over the past 10 days since Martin O'Neill has got the job is his change of language about how long he'll be there, what he wants to do. It was the very start, and then now I'd love to do the cup final. Now there's stuff till the end of the season. Do you think he really wants the job deep down?
I think he's got the bug now, because you're right. He stressed the importance of the fact that, this is interim. We're looking for a permanent manager, and I'm in here temporarily. He wins that game at the weekend, and all of a sudden, he's asking what the date is for the cup final, saying that it would be a proud moment for him. And I think the fans are a wee bit like that as well, Ray. It was a shock. It really was a shock when Martin O'Neill came back into the fold. This is a man who had been out the game for 6 years. He was someone who was integrating himself with the fans. He was doing a lot of the kind of after dinner stuff. And you thought to yourself, his legacy was, 20 odd years ago. But he's got the bug. He's got the bug for it. He's got the tracksuit on. And I think, for as long as these results continue, Ray, more and more fans are getting right into this. There's a nostalgic aspect. Guys like me who watched Martin O'Neill's teams, there is that nostalgia. But whilst you're seeing the performances, just when we needed them, we needed that energy, and we needed the football that we could get excited by again. And whilst that's happening, I don't think we should be in a rush. It seems to me as though we're in safe hands at the moment. So let's not rush any decisions.
Are you a fan of the tracksuit as well?
Well, obviously we'll get onto this, but there was a boycott of merchandise, and Martin O'Neill broke that boycott at the weekend. I think you might have noticed, and the sales of that tracksuit, I'm sure, have gone through the roof.
Killian, for yourself, does it differ from a manager wearing a tracksuit or suit? Do you ever notice that?
No. No. It's, as a player, no, it didn't really make any difference. I know it's garnered a lot of chat about it. I think the whole nostalgia thing is massive in it. It's like, it seems to be a little like similar to the tracksuit. Like, everything now in football is based around nostalgia. Like, brands, clubs are all just rehashing old kits. Like, football boots are all going back to like that 20 years ago, like that era of Martin O'Neill. It's mad that he's back in the dugout. The tracksuits that he's wearing are now suddenly, the retro is the popular thing now. I'm almost saying it's all bizarre, but it's like you never would have thought this. If you said this 3-4 years ago, no one would have believed it, that the way things are happening now, it is what would have been.
Yeah, no, I like the nostalgia, because 20 years ago I was young, so I'm a big fan of that. And when you said it, the first thing I thought of was the Adidas Predator boots that are coming back.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you both this, because Stephen McGowan, we did this podcast straight after the cup final, and Stephen McGowan pointed out that when it hit extra time, it was Shaun Maloney doing the team talk, not Martin O'Neill. Cillian, how big a contribution do you think Shaun Maloney has behind the scenes?
I think he'll be massive. I think he'll be. I think Martin O'Neill has referenced it in terms of the input and intel he's giving him on all the players. Probably, their like just demeanors and stuff like that, day to day kind of things that he'll have seen and witnessed more so than Martin. Martin O'Neill is not quick to kind of like tell people, like, I don't really know these players kind of thing. Like, it almost gives him a little bit of a shield, a bit of a guard, where he can say, well, if things had have went bad, it was like, well, I don't really know these players. It's and I think Shaun Maloney's probably given him a lot of that. Shaun Maloney's more recently in the dugout, knows probably the modern player a bit more than Martin O'Neill would. And he's probably, even like during the game, sometimes you could hear him actually audibly from the dugout, shouting instructions onto the pitch, shouting at players. And he's probably been a big driving force in it. And it's probably been a bit strange for him as well, because he'll have had Martin O'Neill as a manager where there's always that kind of fear and intimidation from when you're a young player to a manager, not any manager, like having Martin O'Neill there. So Shaun Maloney's probably feels a little bit strange in terms of almost like telling him what to do or giving him advice. So it's probably it's a dynamic that's worked out well so far, I think.
Yeah, it gives me big vibes of when you're a pupil at school with your teacher, and then 5 years later you go back as a student teacher at that school, and then you don't know whether to call them sir or their first name. That's the vibe I get between them. Paul John, obviously, Shaun Maloney's doing well. Martin O'Neill came out in the post-match and said that Rangers dominated even though they were down to 10 men. Yes, it has been 2 wins so far, but is there slight papering over the cracks? Is there room for improvement?
There definitely will be room for improvement. There's a momentum at the moment that I think we used to call the new manager bounce. There definitely is a momentum. And then we've got a European game, and that'll be another test as well. I think we went off the boil in the second half. It's safe to say that, even though Rangers were down to 10 men. I would have been really disappointed had we not won the game due to the first half performance and the amount of chances that we created across the piece as well with Jamesy Forrest. But there must have been something wrong, because we weren't getting these performances from the same crowd of players, from the same group of players, and we are going to have to run with that group until January. That's why I think it's quite interesting that, Martin or Shaun, or a combination of both, have decided to either reintroduce players like Trusty or introduce chaps like Callum Osmond into the fray, who couldn't get a look in under the previous manager. So papering over some of the cracks within the team that already existed under Brendan Rodgers, but the squad is good enough, Ray. That was the frustration. We knew that the squad was, in Martin's words, serial winners. Where was that? And hopefully he can tap back into it.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Right, let's move on to the one thing last week that didn't change at Celtic, the relationship between the board and the fans. I find this fascinating. As a Partick Thistle fan, I would love to have won 9 of the last 10 leagues, but obviously things have changed between the fans and the board. So, Paul, has anything changed in the last week? Because, let's be honest, we've talked about how good the last 10 days have been for Celtic, but they're still 9 points behind Hearts with a game in hand. There's still all the funding issues with players. What's changed in the past 10 days, if anything?
I think what happens, and we spoke to some of the old school 1990s activists amongst the Celtic fans, is what happens is if Celtic start winning on the park, there's less of a focus rate. It's just natural. There's less of a focus by a great number of Celtic fans on some of these underlying issues that you mentioned. And some of the issues are, they are real issues. Recruitment has to be much, much better. We have to do it quicker. We need to make sure we're prepared for qualifiers, because that's where we are now, even when we win the league outright, and hopefully we can still do that. There's issues with the stadium, the academy, communication. There are a lot of underlying issues at the football club. But you're right, there's a study in that, isn't there? A football club who are able to win and win regularly and consistently, yet the fans and the board don't have a great relationship, because, the fans want more. They want a higher standard of player coming out of the academy, but also through the recruitment. And at the same time, the communication, had that been better, a lot of these issues could have been dealt with before. So the collective still exists. The objective of the collective is still there, and that's not going to stop. But I think when you looked at the game on Sunday, back the team, sack the board was the message, and the team still got the backing, and that's what's important as well.
Yeah, and for you yourself, Cillian, like we mentioned there, Paul John was talking about the recruitment. Does Celtic really need to spend the millions in the bank, do you think?
Yeah, I think if they want to progress in Europe, we're saying progress in Europe. The first thing was to actually qualify into Europe, which they failed. I think given the opposition they played, I don't think you can really blame that too much on the board. I think that was more of a case in terms of once you get in there and then you're going up against the teams you're going up against, then there's maybe a bit of pressure on the board to invest in. But it's weird, like how things change with literally in 10 days. Since Martin O'Neill's come in, suddenly there's 2 or 3 players that are now playing, and everyone is like, oh, hold on, there actually was good players here. Like, some of these guys aren't the kind of duds that were being portrayed here. It's fascinating how how quickly everything can change. I don't think it's changed in terms of, right, the fans now in such a short time, oh, the board actually were really good, let's forget all about that. I think they're still probably thinking, no, let's not let it die down kind of thing. But I do think in this short time it has probably given them a little bit of a reprieve in terms of we actually have backed the team, and we have got players of a good standard that can come in and help a team.
And Cillian, do you think as a player you've played, I'm thinking mainly in your time on the continent, do fan protests like this affect the players?
Yeah, I've always said that anything a player, if there's a chance for an excuse, football players will find it.
Yeah.
Anyone in any walk of life, if there's an excuse to find, people will find it. And I just think it was creeping into them. You can say whatever you like. Covered a few of the games where the protests were becoming more of the story even before the game and stuff. And this was when Celtic were still neck and neck with Hearts. We at the time we weren't talking about Hearts being top or Celtic trailing them. It was literally all about what protest is going to happen this week on the park, and I think it's hard to deny that. Plus, at the time, because it was a little bit of, it was Brendan Rodgers, it was the manager kind of against the board, this whole thing being portrayed, and before games, that's all people were talking about. It didn't really matter. This was, and sorry to say it again, this was when Celtic were winning. This was when it didn't really matter what was happening. No matter if they won or lost, the chat was going to be what's happening. And I think probably Martin O'Neill has come in. He's completely distanced himself from any of that kind of chat. Any actual serious question seems to get answered with something humorous, which, like, he's played it perfect. He's come in and just completely alleviated any of that from himself, probably from the players as well, so that they're coming out and just playing a bit more freely. And it just seems to be a bit more of a buzz about the place.
Yeah, I totally agree about the comments as well, because numerous times I've been doing Off the Ball on a Saturday and the paper is dominated by the Honda comments. You've got managing in the Premier League's like a holiday. Finally, on the board, Paul John, just obviously rumours swirl about new managers. Craig Bellamy has been linked to head of football at Wales, has come out. You've got Knutson up at Bodo Glimt, because I think it was Gordon Strachan said about this December comments. Kieran McKenna not ruling himself out in these kind of interview questions. How much pressure is under the board to make a good appointment going forward, and will that change a relationship?
I think that the next appointment is huge, because Dermot Desmond obviously is a massive part of this. And I was very critical of the statement that he made upon the departure of Brendan Rodgers. I've also got to say, following on from what Cillian says, and I agree, something of a masterstroke to bring Martin O'Neill back. I don't think anybody could have unified the team, the support, the way that Martin O'Neill has done. So he's got a good track record. Should he be the guy appointing managers is a big question, because obviously a non-executive director shouldn't be doing that. However, he does have a good record. He brought us Martin twice. He's brought us Brendan Rodgers. There have been in the past some left field appointments in the form of, let's say, Ronnie Deila and Ange Postecoglou when we brought them to the football club. Both of them did very, very well. Postecoglou was a revelation. So some of these names you're mentioning there, I think they would fit. I mean, Knutson, is he too comfortable with the same club? Does the system within that club really suit him? And could he adapt to working under this board that we are so critical of, Ray? I mean, this is a big question. I like him. I like his style of football. Kieran McKenna, up-and-coming emerging talent. Would Celtic pay some of that fee that is being quoted, £5 million to get him out of his contract at Ipswich? We have the money. If he's the man, why not? Dermot Desmond likes appointing Irish managers, and he's got a brilliant record of it. So, I think he's got a profile. Craig Bellamy's interesting. It was incredible because he was barely here, yet he's looked upon as something of a hero for that small spell. He's done remarkably well, both as a number 2 and since moving into management with Wales. But I think he harbours some real ambitions to take Wales into the finals, and it seems a bit early for him. I like him. I like his mentality when he speaks. He really does interest me. I find him an interesting character, but I think it's come too early for Craig Bellamy.
Okay, we're recording this on Wednesday, but let's talk about football and tomorrow night's crucial Europa League tie. Cillian, Celtic playing Midtjylland. Their away form in Europe's not been the best for several seasons. Simply, how important is it for Celtic to get the win tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think it's massive, just in terms of keeping the momentum that they've built since Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney have come in. I think it will be quite obviously, it will be their biggest test in terms of their toughest fixture they'll have so far.
Do you think that's bigger than a Rangers Celtic semi-final, or are you just stirring up people? What do you actually think?
No, in terms of quality, I think Midtjylland are in a completely different place to where Rangers are. I don't think, and the first game for them coming in, Falkirk at home, midweek, it couldn't have worked out better. Rangers are getting better, but I think Midtjylland will be a different test. I'm probably not as confident as I would have been in the previous 2 games. I just do think they're coming up against a well-drilled, good European team who are on good form, especially in the Europa League.
Yeah, the original Moneyball team as well, aren't they? Paul John, for yourself, how important is it to get a result tomorrow? See off Kilmarnock at the weekend, and then that Martin O'Neill ball momentum just keeps rolling.
Yeah, takes us into another break. And I think I was looking at the last time Martin O'Neill was in the dugout for Celtic in Europe. It was AC Milan 2004 at home, and we drew that game. We were up against some top-notch opposition that season, Barcelona, AC Milan. Midtjylland are in a different place, I think, than our opponents at the weekend. I'll tell you, if we get a draw over there, it would be a brilliant result at this stage. And a lot of the criticism around Martin O'Neill's first time in charge was our away form in Europe. Even though we had some brilliant runs, we didn't do that well on the road. You speak to some of his players, and that's always the big regret. So hopefully we can put that to bed as well. They're flying in the Europa League. We need to make something of that campaign. This season could turn out at the end of the season to be a successful one. I always think now, with the new structure of the leagues, that Celtic should be aiming for 10 European games. So get at least a playoff out of this, get into that middle bracket of the league. But as I say, they're flying, Midtjylland. I just think of guys like Sviatchenko and Rasmussen when I think of Midtjylland, because that's where their players came from. But like you say, they've had a system that's really worked for them. And now we're going to that game and you're thinking a draw would be a good result. But then the Kilmarnock game, that's massive as well. Every league game at the moment is a must-win. There's shades of the 1986 Love Street season here, where Hearts were way out ahead and Celtic managed to claw it back, win it on the last day of the season, 40 years ago, is this campaign. So, yeah, the league is important, but so is, for the momentum, so is the Europa League.
You can just imagine Hearts fans who are listening to this, that shiver down the spine when you mention Love Street 86. Prediction for the game tomorrow, then. Cillian, give us a scoreline. What do you think it's going to be?
2-2.
A man with panic in his eyes there. Paul John, what do you go for?
I do think it will be a draw. I'm going to say 1-1. We seem to be playing kind of more open, so there could well be goals conceded. But if we come away with a draw, I think it's a good result. We should be aiming to finish somewhere in the middle of that league table. So a draw away to Midtjylland would be a good result for me.
Well, that's all we got time for. Many thanks to Paul John Dykes and Cillian Sheridan, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Yes, a fascinating time at Celtic. I think the main takeaway was that Celtic like an Irish connection with their manager. So wait 10 years and stick 20 on Cillian Sheridan being the next Celtic manager. It's nailed on. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
The Scotland Rugby Podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby Podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby.
There's a lot to be excited about. Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are at an absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
You cannot help but be so excited. It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds.